Welcome everyone to the fireside chat. Can someone confirm either by speaking up or in the chat that my sound is coming out okay?
Sounds great.
Perfect.
Thank you. So hi. So we normally have an introduction, but I don't know it by heart. Just for the rules of engagement. So the fireside chat is a very open discussion that we discuss things about FHIR and about standards in general. There is no agenda. We just discuss whatever we want to discuss at a given time. So please feel free to bring up discussions, to interrupt the others if something interesting needs to be said. And yeah, so this is a Digital Square presentation where, as part of our effort to share more and more the standards, the user standards, and the FHIR adoption as we are pushing for it. This is a very informal chat, as I mentioned, so there is no need to do formal introductions. We have 15 people on the call, so that would take some time. But feel free to introduce yourself as you're introducing any topic that you want to discuss. And that's pretty much my question. What would we want to discuss today? So from my side, I have no specific topics that I would like to mention, but looking forward to any ideas, any pending issues, so any things that you've seen in our webinars or anywhere else that you would like to discuss. Any current issues that you're having with projects around FHIR that you would want to discuss. Anything that's itching you more or less would be a good topic to discuss. And with that, I would leave to anyone to just come up with questions, ideas for discussion, topics, anything. Anyone? If that doesn't work, I'm going to do a quick round of introductions and ask people what they are doing, and then that might give some ideas. But I think it would be better if people just mention what are they working on, what they will be working on, or what they are worried about. Okay, let me focus this a bit. Is anyone in this participating here, anyone have any active projects using FHIR?
Jose, I'll jump off the ledge if nobody's else is ready yet. And I'm new to the group, and I'll just say, hello. My colleague Wendy joined last month. I'm from TIP Global Health. We're working on a frontline digital tool called FHIR, deployed in Rwanda and a couple other places planned in East Africa. And we're currently working on building FHIR resources for various aspects of the project for planned interoperabilities. And when you said, what are you worried about? I guess, one of the things that I worry about a little bit is how well the standards will map to some of our workflows, because one of the things that we're seeking to address is just complex workflows that happen in situations where there's lots of people, say, showing up to a health center at one time. So, and we collect a lot of information that might not be standardized yet. So that's just sort of I wouldn't call it a huge worry. It's just one of the things we think about.
Quick reaction on that. So just to get the conversation going, and then others please bring other stuff. But so there, I heard two things. So one thing is if we have lots of people coming into a hospital or a clinic, the fact that they are a lot, that doesn't. I mean, that's still. If there are a lot, if you standardize things, then it's pretty much the same data set that you have for one and for many. So there's two questions. I think there's two aspects of that. The fact that there are a lot, it might mean that you don't know if your patients are really unique, because if one guy comes today and tomorrow for the same thing. So that's one thing. The other thing is how the FHIR resources map to our workflows. I was doing some writing on this recently, just an idea, and I do not know if you want to reflect on this further. The way that makes sense to me. So I've been doing, or I was doing business analysis a long time ago, and I'm at heart an industrial automation engineer. So I learned, to put things in a way that if the machine does things right, then people don't have to worry too much about this. So that's kind of my mindset. So with that, if we see the system as how can we make FHIR resources so that this fits into the process, etc. My current thinking is the following. When you have a FHIR specification, you should identify the use cases. So what use case do you want to cover? From those, and the use cases could be, for example, admitting a patient for HIV care. And in those processes, so in those use cases, so the use cases typically not in the sense of UML use cases, but in the sense of user histories, let's say, or scenarios, something that, well, the patient goes in and then the system talks to that and the system sends that to over there. So if you think of these user stories, more complex user stories, what FHIR is looking at is the data that is exchanged in several steps. So when the patient comes in, there is no data exchange, but when the patient goes to talk to the secretariat, there is no exchange of information. But from the moment that they enter the data or they search for the patient, if he already exists, then we have some exchange of information, whether it's for querying or for registering some data about the patient. So, and if you identify those things, then you will end up saying, okay, in this step, I have this data. And I'm just breaking down. So if you have a story to tell, then in that story, some part of it will require or will use or may use some data exchange. And when you identify those, then you would normally say, and in this step, this is the data that I want. And if you look at in our webinars, the method that we're trying to follow, and it's in the webinars, is that first thing we do, we come up with the requirements and we consolidate our logical data models. So without any concern about what FHIR resources will be needed for that, and there's lots of gaps at this moment in some of the things that we are doing. What we care is that patient admission, there is a search. Okay, what can this search be about? Or patient registration, there is this exchange of information. What information do we want there? And we document that as a logical data model, or in FHIR we call it logical model. And then we capture that. And that is the part that pretty much we can discuss with clinical experts, with business experts, and also with technical experts without requiring everyone to be a FHIR expert. So that's quite important, because you consolidate the business things with a business language. And you say, in this part, I need this data, or in this part, the patient ID is not mandatory because the patient just arrived and we don't know what the patient ID is, and we don't want to create a new one because maybe the patient exists. So first we do the search, and if the patient ID exists, then we can create the patient ID, and then the patient ID is of course mandatory. So we can tell these stories, and that's step one. That's the functional side. That's the functional analysis that we do, and from then on, then we dump it on the basket for the technical guys, and they will figure out whatever needs to be done to do that on FHIR. So, and I really like that separation, because it's not a Cartesian, ivory tower type of separation. It's not that we do this and then we don't care about the technology. There's lots of ping pong involved. There's lots of iteration involved there. So if the technical guys would say, well, but for this to happen, you need to have a flag there, or you need to have a status, was the patient already, whatever, I don't know. So, but having the functional people not requiring to be FHIR experts in practice, not wanting them not to fall asleep while everyone is discussing the FHIR extensions and FHIR profiling, etc., for which they don't care. that tends to be useful. And in practice, you will have in one story, you will have different data objects, and maybe they correspond to different to the same resource. For example, you might have a patient profile for external patient, patient profile for unknown patient, and patient profile for internal patient. I'm just making up again. But if you have those data objects where in the patient profile for internal patient, you know the data that you have. Patient profile for unknown patient, you really just want the name and date of birth, for example. And those are profiles of the same FHIR resource, but you don't have to care about that. You just say from a functional perspective, these are the data that we need. I was just looking at something from ISO recently, and the topic was, I think, immunization. Like when registering an immunization, the data is this, and when registering so when querying for immunizations, the data is that, and that's fine. So some things are mandatory in one side and not mandatory in the other. And if it ends up being the same FHIR resource, the functional guys don't need to worry about that. So, sorry, that was a long description of a possible process. I don't know if this resonates.
It's extremely helpful and also confirming in terms of, I think your separation of the functional and the technical is sort of the path that we were taking as well. I mean, it helped. We're literally in our first month of serious engagement in building a resource, and the typed nature of FHIR makes what you're talking about fairly easy, because there's a pattern to use on the technical side for the functionality required on the quote unquote business side.
Yeah, and just a few more, I would say, bells and whistles to it. If you do that if you put that in a process, then you have a few things kind of for free. So you can document your data dictionaries, because your logical data models, they are your data dictionaries, which is what at some point you might want to take care of. With all the advantages that this brings, like you can ask a business expert which of these items is PII, or which of this is sensitive data that you don't want to disclose. And you do that on the functional level. You don't have to worry about profiles, extensions, and whatever. So that's one thing. The other thing besides the data dictionary is that, and this is the process that I was following before, is that if you have the logical model and then if you have the profiles, it is really easy, and we are working on some sort of tooling to help there. Say, well, this thing goes there, this thing maps there, this thing maps there. And if you look at that, and there was a visualization that I have sometimes that it's not, I cannot reproduce it, but if you look at those and say, oh wait, there is one thing without an arrow, and if the arrow is, there's a FHIR element without an arrow, depends. If it's an optional element, who cares? If it's a mandatory element, then you have to figure out, what to do with it, it's a state or whatever. But if it's on the other end, if it's something like your logical model has some data that is relevant, and if you haven't mapped it to a FHIR resource, then your profile is simply not complete. So you can also use that as a measure of progress. And an additional advantage, when FHIR changes from R4 to R5 and to R6, then you don't have to go back and repeat all the functional discussions, because those things are relatively stable, I would say, or they change at a slower pace than the technology. And then you can iterate a bit on the technology side if you want. And I think that would also help.
Thank you, very helpful.
Very good question. Anyone else having pain points or joy points when using FHIR? What are people up to? Or what long path or short path are people entering into? So anyone having more experience or planned experience with FHIR implementation? I can pick a few names from the list, but I would like people to jump in. If not, I think the first person that I saw joining was Jomel Wong. Do you have any if you want to speak up, of course, do you have any current challenges, issues, questions, things that you would like to share about FHIR?
Hello, everyone. Actually, I'm new to this whole thing. I just subscribed recently to the mailing list, so I'm really just here to listen. Yeah, I have no real experience with fire other than having read a bit about it. So I'm on the mailing list because my work in our health ministry is related to the standards, and so I just want to expose myself in some of the issues that people um, confront with it. For example, we're having difficulties in um, coming up with EMR systems that facilities actually want to use and that can actually be made interoperable. Uh, so yeah, we're in that process, and I'm just listening in because I have nothing to contribute.
That's good. No, this is really good. Actually, so and when I said please bring up what you are planning to do or doing, that was exactly the same thing. So let me ask a few things, Jamel, or just let me make a few suggestions there. So if you just joined the mailing list, because several things that you said gave me some thoughts. So for people that are joining the discussions or embarking on FHIR now, our webinars, they have a lot of talking, but some useful information as well, especially the pointers. So if you want to learn specifics about FHIR, there's a couple of webinars, there's lots of YouTube videos out there about FHIR, and there's always chat.fhir.org. So if you have any beginner questions, advanced questions, or even questions like, I have no idea where to use this, or how to start an engagement with a higher level decision maker at the ministry, or I have no idea how to tell this, how to propose this to my developers, there's always someone that can help, and that's the scope, that's the purpose of these sessions, but also the scope, the purpose of the of several channels in chat.fhir.org. So if you don't have a chat.fhir.org account, please go ahead and create one and ask anything there. It's really a rich community. FHIR is a lot about the community and the people coming together to provide knowledge as they can and contributing with tools, etc. To improving the FHIR ecosystem. So that's one thing, Jamel. If you want to jump into chat.fhir.org, then just go ahead, and any question is welcome. So I can say that I also have some difficulties or some challenges being a technologist in the thing that I'm missing the most, which is how would I approach someone that is so high level that if I talk about use cases, they don't even they will not even acknowledge that. That's too detailed. So there is lots that can be done in terms of enterprise architecture for using standards. Which capabilities do we want to enable at a given health system? What are the highest level requirements there? So there's lots of connections to make from the technology, and including the things that I mentioned before, the use cases and the stories and the data models. Between that and the highest level that we can expect. So when a ministry says, when someone at the ministry says we need to use FHIR, that's really good, but that's really bad, because where do you want to start? And the question, where do you want to start? And the answer might be, well, somewhere. Or why don't you redo the things that we have been doing? Why don't you redo them on FHIR? To which my answer would be, well, that thing works. Let's not touch it just yet. So there's lots of things that can trigger this very first approach to FHIR. So those are interesting stuff to discuss. Another thing that was triggered by this, by Jamel's current status, is that maybe linking to the previous topic, is that if you are at the Ministry of Health, one of the things that FHIR enables, and it's really, really good, is the whole thing of data dictionaries and data models, etc. So if you're in a ministry, at some point you just want to get stuff done, but after a while, depending on if it's a few months or a few years, but after a while you don't want to have patient gender in one profile and patient sex in another profile, because then you cannot do analytics, because the data is, in one system, one type of system, the data model is doing one thing, and in another type of system, data model is inconsistent. So the consistency of your data models at a business level, that's also important, and that's also something that will be interesting to address going forward. So yeah, I think there's lots of things as you are starting the engagement, the awareness of how crazy this thing can go, and just a few more thoughts. It's not only about making FHIR, it's about testing FHIR, it's about developing the applications, and about making sure that the applications are usable and interoperable. Well, interoperable, okay, we have FHIR to use that, but not only FHIR, we have to see SNOMED or LOIN. Do we use any of those? Do we make our own codes? What about the testing part of FHIR? So how do we test that? Is it an official testing? Who's going to test that, and who is going to manage the changes to FHIR? Because today you have a project, but after your project is done, then there's no budget to maintain the specifications again, and who's going to maintain those specifications? So there's lots of things that are necessary in terms of management and governance of this. It's not really just standardization is not really just a technical thing. It comes with a lot of stuff to do, and it's basically maintaining a specification for its entire life cycle. So there's lots of stuff, and I'm trying to learn myself about how would this engagement with Ministry of Health says, let's start with FHIR. Great. Where would I start? I don't even know where I would start. I think I would ask a few questions like, what do you want to see working tomorrow that's not working today? Especially on FHIR, I would ask, what system do you want to see connected tomorrow that is not connected today? Or what data do you want shared tomorrow that is not shared today? That might be the first kick in that discussion. But yeah, those discussions, they can be a lot of fun in terms of discovery, what is really the problem that we're trying to fix. So thanks, Joel, for the explaining where you are. And anyone else, just please jump ahead. Anyone have any situations that they want to comment on and get us discussing?
Hi, Jose. This is Steve.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to comment on the last statement you made about if the Ministry of Health asks you where to start and all that, or rather how you go about determining where to start. I mean, I think like the previous speaker, Jean-Mel was saying, I mean, FHIR is relatively new to many people. I mean, the people who are on this call are probably really advanced experts in terms of digital health and all that, and yet FHIR is generally new to most of us and all that. So you can certainly be sure that with most Ministry of Health folks, they really don't know. I mean, like, they really wouldn't be able to answer that question. So I was going to ask, how can we turn this around to sort of tell them in a way that they understand how they could actually use FHIR? And so, given that we have contextual understanding of the local ecosystem in terms of digital health and all that, I think it's a lot easier, in my opinion, and also my implementation experience, to actually package FHIR in a way that shows exactly how they can use it to solve certain problems in a sustainable, practical manner. Just the whole story we're always talking about around FHIR and standards. But yeah, I mean, honestly, from my experience, at least working in more than a dozen countries in Africa, you really wouldn't go far with that kind of conversation. You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Excellent question. And I'm just, my first reaction to that is that I can share some ideas, but I think the best thing is actually to do something else. I can type some ideas in a shared document, because it will grow, because this is such an interesting topic. Like, so what? There's a new standard. Yeah, so what? Including what I said before. I mean, if something is working, why would we bother going to FHIR? What is the persuasive argument there? What's the trigger for actually embarking on a new standard? And do you want to do big bang, or changing everything to FHIR, or do you want to keep the existing stuff and the rest, the new stuff, goes to FHIR? And yeah, what is the appeal of FHIR? And there's lots of things that can be said there. Does it make sense as a reaction to your question? Does it make sense that I share my screen and I just type a few notes that the discussion is not lost in the ether?
Yeah, well, it will be helpful to me. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the rest of the audience, but that would be helpful to me. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just start something else. Let me share. I'm just waiting in Google Doc, just to keep some bullet points at least. Let me share my screen. So I don't know how to call this yet. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So let's see. Just a few things. So rolling out FHIR. So just putting some thoughts to to the document. So rolling out FHIR. This would be big bang or progressive. For example, if we already replace with FHIR. So this is one thing that one thought. So just one of the challenges that I had with FHIR adoption. My preference is no. If something is working well, when it becomes a pain point, I mean, if we don't have anything else to improve, then we can improve things with FHIR. But that's part of the second thing. What makes FHIR better than the other standards? Or what is the thing with FHIR? And Stephen, I think this is the question that you ask. Like, what is the advantage, or what's the reason for us to see FHIR as the next thing? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So there's a few things. So, and I'm trying I'm going to try to describe this in the least technological possible way. So first of all, FHIR uses, sorry for that, that's not really a good start, but state-of-the-art technology for exchanging data. So this is meaning like it's compatible with everything that you hear about web services, distributed apps, compatible with mobile, etc. This is one thing. So it's okay. It's a technology thing. The other thing is that FHIR stands for fast interoperability resources. The focus is on the fast, and it is, and this I think we can explain it to the people. It's really fast to learn and fast to use. So this is one of the appeals, is that if you give a specification like CDA to a technical person, they will take a while before they can actually do something useful with it. If you give FHIR to someone, then they will take a very, very short time to actually show something working. And this is one of the things that is really important. So, and actually, let me how to say, enter that train of thought. So this makes agility and continuous progress much more easy, or much easier. Much easier. Steve, just let me know if this is resonating, or if it's deviating, if it's going to things that you don't find that the stakeholders would find interesting, and others as well, of course. So please share if this is not a good if it's not taking a good turn. But one of the good things that in technology is that we don't want to have 2 years between the requirements being discussed and we see some progress, because by that time it's too late to change anything. And if someone forgot something in the requirements, then it's impossible to go and change. So one of the trends that we have been seeing is continuous delivery, agility, etc. And FHIR is excellent for that. It's really easy to prototype something on FHIR.
Can I ask a question, Jose?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna, yes, so this makes a lot of sense to me, and it's actually useful for a conversation. But the other question I have is, so whereas, and I agree with you, whereas FHIR is easy to learn and use, I was gonna ask you that, is it equally easy to implement? So like, for example, if, let's say I'm making a case to the Ministry of Health and I know what systems they're using, the usual global goods, OpenMRS, Medic, stuff like that. DHS2 and all, and then I'm making the case to them how they should, I'm basically making a case, and then around the issue of capacity, which is what you have here about learning and all that. Is it also the case that, from your experience, that it's also equally easy for them to actually apply FHIR appropriately in the systems they're actually using? So the current developer capacity they have, and other technologies they have, they would theoretically learn FHIR really fast. But would they also, can you also assume that they'll also be able to equally apply it fast and practically, just to enhance the systems that they're actually using for service delivery? Yeah.
So actually, I'm putting that here. So FHIR uses state-of-the-art standard technologies for exchanging data, web services, etc. So this means that most developers already, or will already have, or how can I say, it's very quick for a developer to say, here's a web service, go and play with it, because they already have the libraries, the components, the know-how, etc., because it's such a well implemented set of technologies. So I hope this addresses, so most developers will already have the libraries to use FHIR. For example, you have JavaScript, Python, Java, etc. All standard FHIR libraries. It's really easy to do things on FHIR. So, and because it uses we have seen, I think that's an advantage of let me try to decompose what I'm thinking. We have seen an explosion of web apps, remote apps, all these things, Facebook, Twitter, so social media, but also banking apps, etc. They are all based on the same technologies, and they grow so fast and so well because they have this facility. Because if you're doing a banking application, tomorrow you can do a healthcare application if you're on the technology side, because they pretty much use the same kind of technology behind it. So things being standardized there, and FHIR sitting on top of those standards, JSON, XML, and REST services, etc. It makes it really easy for a developer to say, to be able to say, I want to create a small application that just shows the patients that that were admitted today. Well, you just do a search, a standard search, and in a standard RESTful service, and then you get standard content back, and then you do this. It's really, really, really easy. So this is one of the advantages of FHIR. And so there's standard libraries. So the standard libraries for all the languages. There's a FHIR layer on top of most of those languages, and there is how can I say, there's a very much growing set of tools. There's servers, lots of servers available out there. They can just, you want to play with it, and you play with it. A few weeks ago, and I'm not a developer, so a few weeks ago I was wanting to demonstrate something. I was tired of writing PowerPoints and documents. And I said, you know what, I'm not a developer, but I can do something. I can just quickly prototype something, because I know that if I do it in JavaScript, I don't have to worry too much about how to link this with FHIR, because it's just another call to a RESTful service, as any JavaScript application can do. So these are really, it's a standard technology layer that all these applications like Facebook, banking applications, they use. So FHIR has that big advantage. It relies on that, on the industry standards. Does it compute?
Yep, that's helpful.
Okay. Additionally to this, there is few things. So the ecosystem, so people can find the tools for multi-developers to start. So language libraries, see below, and let me just open one thing. Reference implementations. This one. So there's even a page that says open source implementations of FHIR. So there's Java servers, so libraries, lots of libraries, see, lots of stuff about handling FHIR. Choose your language, and it will most likely be here with at least one flavor. So Swift, PHP, Java, and another flavor of JavaScript. Lots of JavaScript doesn't have one single reference; it has a lot of implementations. And so I'm going to put this link on this document just in case we want to share. There is also several servers to test and to play with. Sorry for typing at the same time as I speak. So there is public test servers as well available on FHIR. So if you want to do your own application, maybe you don't have to roll out your own server, or maybe you want to roll out your own server, which is just a Docker command line. So for example, not this one, sorry. So if you're a Docker guy, so I don't think this is the right one. There's going to be, this is just a flavor of FHIR. But yeah, this is it. Get your own instance of FHIR server and client running in 10 minutes or less. It's really up to like this. So you have the I don't remember what's the right one for FHIR. So for Happy, but there are Docker images. So the tooling ecosystem is so rich that you just say, okay, I just want to have. Let me see if I find it. So there's a test server. This was where I was before. I will find it. I'll put it in the document. It should be it. Sorry, Docker, and this should be it. Oops, not this one. Yep. Oops, not Happy FHIR. Too many. You see too many servers of FHIR available. I'm just trying to look at the plain vanilla one. I will look into that. Sorry for not having that ready. But yeah, so you have lots of servers that you can just roll out yourself. And let me just give one example of that. I think I mentioned this in the last call that we had. Someone asked me, I want to do a prototype, or I want to try something about allergies and the prevalence of allergies. And I said, good, and let me know when you need a server, because I can give you a server in 5 minutes, because it's really like that. It's just that you run a command line, you run the Docker command line, and you have a server next to that just supports the standard FHIR. The rest is just profiling and prototyping, and just as in the sense that gives more work. But if you have a server, you can very quickly show the value of things. You can very quickly show, this is how I'm going to search for my patients, and this is how a patient would look like before or after being admitted, something like this. You can actually show these results very, very easily. Okay, so I can actually roll out your own in minutes. So this facility to do something, to show value to the business, even though it's a server. So I'm just going to show my server here. So one of the servers that I have running, I was playing with this. So I just wanted to show, this is a server, and here's so I just invented a new type of search that I wanted to do for my server. Okay, great. This doesn't show anything to the business user, but it does show that it is there. It works. I don't have to do anything. And if I want to say, can I search for all of the medications? Yeah, sure. Here it is. Can I just figure out the one that has a specific identifier that I mentioned? Well, here it is. Can I search by status or whatever? Sure, I can demonstrate all these things, not trying to convince, but just demonstrating it. And here it works. And this is step one. And as I said, it's really, really easy. Let me see if I have something here. I did a very, very simple application a few months ago, and it was on the other server. Sorry. Let's see if I still have it. I don't have it. There we go. Not this one, but oops. I don't think I have it. I did not upload it. So this is just a simple application that I just made for, you know, for filling in some forms. And actually this one is not working, so I have to go to the other one. So if you want to search to make an application that just shows a form, all of this, so all that you see here is just, you know, I have a server that contains something. This is really technical. Don't worry with this, but I can very easily demonstrate a questionnaire for assessing the risk of diabetes. I can tell you that the time spent in getting the specifications was kind of 10 times the time, or more, I think more than 10 times the time that I spent actually implementing the whole thing, because I have a server, it's a few minutes, I integrated this, it was just a bit of copy paste of the code, and the rest is just making the FHIR specifications. It was really, really easy, and I would never, you know, never even start if I had to do this by hand, just to convince people that it's possible to set up a quick prototype FHIR. It's all, many things are already done for us, and that's a good advantage. So you can actually show things. You can show questionnaires for diabetes risk, or what is it, allergy intolerance, self-reporting questionnaire. You know, this is there, and this is zero. What you're seeing here, there's a bit of code, but after that, it's just the machine, the FHIR server handles it automatically. So if I just select this thing, then it shows me one questionnaire. This thing shows me another questionnaire. All of these things are standardized, so the tools are standardized, and I can really, really go fast. Which means, and going back to also linking this a bit to the previous discussion on models, etc. If I made a mistake here, the time to iterate that, it's really quick. So I say, if I make a mistake on the logical model and say this should be mandatory and it's not, the time between this is decided and this migrates, this is converted to the FHIR specification, and then I can actually show this on a server, is really, really short. It's really, I don't know, it depends if all the people are on the table. You can actually do this live coding things. So this is one of the big advantages of FHIR. It really allows us, it has a set of systems, servers, knowledge out there that really allows us to go very, very quick through the process of making something, demonstrating, and iterating this if necessary. I hope it's getting interesting, because the other thing that I wanted to mention is that FHIR makes things really simple compared to, for example, CDA templates. So let me just show something, V2 messages. I don't know if you're familiar with the HL7 V2 messages, or a general question. Let me see if I can see a silly image of that. This is an HL7 image. These things, all these nice characters. You have to be a technical guy to understand this. So CDA template. Let me see if I find pictures of this. So CDA templates, they are XML templates, so they are really not easy to understand. They look like this, and you really don't understand this easily. Whereas if you look at the FHIR specification, I look at the FHIR specification for a patient, it's much more obvious. So FHIR also has invested a bit into making it easier to understand. So you see FHIR patient has an identifier, 0 to many identifiers, and you can click on that to see what that means. And the patient can have a status active or not, and the name and the telecom. So FHIR is also interesting because, first of all, it gives this first impression much more, I would say, human readable, decent way of presenting the data structures. It's all about data structures at the end, but FHIR has a much more user-friendly way of displaying this. So that as a way to understand FHIR for non-techies. And there's another thing that I think it's also important. FHIR introduces some solutions to several pain points. So in doing standards and doing implementation, we have several problems with a couple of aspects, pain points. For example, the use of terminologies. So the way that we use, and I'm not going to the details there, but if the way that we use terminology on FHIR, like LOINC, LOMED, etc., it's much more facilitated in FHIR, and it's easier to implement, setting up a terminology server or using a terminology server out there, validating if the values that we have, if they are conformant or not, specifying different types of conformance to terminologies. That is made much easier in FHIR. So using and maintaining those terminologies is much easier in FHIR than it used to be in general. The other thing is handling data structures and models. So that's what we already discussed. The other thing is handling testing, and very important as well, handling derived specifications. For those that were in the webinar, FHIR makes it extremely easy. Let me just show you this food allergy. So FHIR makes it extremely easy to have a. Let me show you this and the other one. So I had a few months ago we had a webinar where we created, just for sake of discussion, we created a profile on food allergy. So something that was based on the FHIR resource allergy intolerance, but we call it food allergy profile. And we did what we had to do. And the exercise this week was to transform that into a national specification. So how would we do that? In FHIR, it is extremely easy to do that. So just for you to see that, let me just show you the GitHub actually, but I did that. So this is food allergy national. So I wanted to change something, and it was really just one line of text that I had to change. So creating something national based on something international, which means creating reusable specifications, it's really easy on FHIR. And those are problems that really usually slow down the process, or in many other places, in many other areas, they used to slow down the process. So FHIR has invested a lot in making things computable and machine readable, etc., whatever is needed to make sure that if I want to make a national flavor of some guidance, I can, which means that, for example, the WHO can publish their specifications, their data dictionaries, and then we can reuse part of that by adding our national layer. And a project in my country can use that and build on the national layer and add their own layer. So so this inheritance and reuse specification. So this is really facilitated on FHIR. So this is creating and main. So I'm just calling it like this: maintaining derived and reusable specifications, something like this. This is also another plus point of FHIR. So it comes down to the thing that FHIR is a technology standard. It's eminently a technology standard, but it's a technology standard that is looking at ease of adoption, growing the community. So if I have a question about how to do this in JavaScript, I will figure out someone has already had the same problem, or someone is actually working on this, or I can just have someone that is not yet having that pain point, but they are interested in discussing it. So it's really about the community using best practices and making things smoother and smoother as we have. Just as a final example here, I have been recently working with some colleagues on a thing that is a step even further on our process, which is how can I make the specifications, so like a profile like this or an implementation guide like this, and deploy a server with this content in, so that I don't even have to change the server and manually upload things to the server. So just saving a couple of minutes, which is not important per se, but it's a problem that if I have to remember doing that, maybe sometimes I forget. So ideally, I should I should just say, when I finish my specification, my demo server is automatically up to date with that specification, so that my developers, they can see that I have changed the cardinality of that element. So from now on, they will have what they need to test. So we are also working on this even more immediate step or more immediate process to launch and test run our specifications. So transporting our specifications onto a server and making the server work according to those, something that we're working on. So it's all about creating more and more dynamics so that people have less and less work with the technology, and the pain points that people go through, maintaining terminologies, you have to do it, but you don't have to be a SNOMED and a LOINC expert to do that. You just have to know how FHIR handles value sets, and that is extremely easy because things are really made easier in terms of authoring and publishing and deploying those things. So making a server, adding a value set and making a server for it, deploying that server, it's a matter of minutes. So I don't know if this still is appealing or if it adds to the appeal of FHIR.
Very much.
I do not know how to call this document. FHIR. Point, I hope. Yeah, so I don't know if there is any things that I missed, and others, if they have any other topics, just let me know. We are almost at time. I can stay for a bit longer if anyone has any other topics, questions, curiosities to mention, things that I missed.
Jose, this is Satydeep from India. I have a question. I mean, I just saw that in your Chrome, you searched for FHIR implementation with ABDM. So as we know that ABDM is a digital mission from Government of India. So how is that implemented?
Which ones?
Or how are you FHIR implementation in ABDM? You have written that. If you look for that.
So FHIR implementations in
in ABDM. You can search for that, right? You have searched somewhere in your Chrome. You have searched for that. So I just had a curiosity on that.
EB as in, can you spell it out?
I just wrote in chat.
ABDM. Oh, I don't see it in Chrome.
No. What I'm just trying to see that, but you have searched for it. You have searched somewhere in your Chrome history. You have it.
Like this. Oh, there's something there. I already had it. Yeah. That's the implementation guide from India.
Yes.
Is that what you are looking for?
That's what I'm just trying to look for. Where is that? And yeah.
So this is the National Resource Center for EHR Standards in India has published this. I don't know. Let's see when they publish this, because it's always on the 15th of February. They have published this version of their FHIR profiles. I don't know what's the status of this. Yeah, so I guess this is still this might be a work in progress. I don't know. It depends. Let me see. What's the version? What's the version? Yes, this is a CI build. So it's normally CI builds. They are expected to convey the content, but maybe they have some issues. Actually, just a possibly interesting point. So if you look at the FHIR specification, just general knowledge that I think is important. So if you have hl7.org/FHIR, this is the current published version of the specification. So this is the FHIR version. Whatever we do in FHIR, we have all these official releases that have passed, and there is also the current development build. So which might be, as you see here, it will be incorrect and inconsistent. This is the thing that we are working. So we are preparing the next release 5 of FHIR, and so that is the let's say the development version. This is the official version. And if I look at this one, it says CI build, so I also assume that it's the work in progress version. I don't know. I don't know more about this. So you have.
No, thanks. We are working on it. We'll just update on that. We'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Good. And interesting thing that you mentioned that you mentioned this is that the discovery of fire. So there's also a fire registry that you have. So everything that is published on FHIR, you have this one and I think it's at FHIR.org. You have two registries. So everything that's implemented out there, FHIR keeps a registry of that. So if you see, I want to search for US, that should work. That should work because I have something. Okay, let me see for USA. No, it doesn't work. The search doesn't work. I'll have to file a bug with this. Let me see the other registry. So US. Yeah, the US score is there. So FHIR also tries to collect, to see what's out there being deployed, so that we can have sort of an inventory of what is being out there. And the discovery of what is being out there is extremely important, and that's something that we need to work on, we as a FHIR community, because many times you are going to do something, but you don't know whether some work has been developed there, and as a consequence, you don't know if you need to do that or if you're just reinventing someone's wheel, or if that someone else's wheel was square and then you have to actually do it properly, but you should engage with them. So this is one of the things that is also very interesting, and we have a registry, but I don't know if that is going to be enough as things grow more and more. There's lots of FHIR implementations out there. Anything else?
No, I think that's fine with me. We'll dig deep and we'll post a question in the forum.
I will indeed. So, and I will just start adding. I will add the FHIR registries here. So as we are over time, so is there anything urgent that we want to discuss today, or we are good? Any other questions? If not, to wrap up, thank you, and yeah, please look at our materials out there. Please join the chat.fhir.org, create an account, it's free, it's openly available, and there's always someone somewhere that is willing to help with any questions or any challenges that you might be having, or willing to look at your good ideas. With that, I thank you, and I wish you a good weekend, and I talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.